Hi guys, I'm Ethan,
I'm Dan.
and John isn't here right now, but trust us when we say he did do a lot of work on this.
Yes, he did.
The project we were assigned to do is Loving versus Virginia, which happened in 1967. This was a landmark civil rights decision, and it was approved by the United Supreme Court, which invalidated laws prohibiting interracial marriage.
The case was brought by Mildred Loving, a black woman, and Richard Loving, a white man, who were living in Virginia. They were sentenced to 1 year in prison for marrying each other. Their marriage violated the state's anti-miscegenation statute, the Racial Integrity Act of 1924, which prohibited marriage between people classified as white and colored. The Supreme Court, their ruling was unanimous. It held the prohibition as unconstitutional, which overturned Pace versus Alabama from 1883, and it ended all race-based legal restrictions on marriage in the United States.
Say hi. Say hi. I want to highlight two things real quick. Two key terms, actually, that Dan said in a short monologue. The first one is anti-miscegenation, which states, which is basically racial segregation, separation, actually, between races during marriage. So, in Virginia, whites legally could not marry blacks, so a white man couldn't marry a black woman, and a black man couldn't marry a white woman. And then the other one is the Racial Integrity Act of 1924, which states at birth babies were classified into two divisions, white or colored, which basically separates society.
Before I mention the case Pace versus Alabama in 1883, that case ruled that Alabama's anti-miscegenation laws, they ruled them constitutional, as in a black man couldn't marry a white woman, and the other way around.
Some more fun facts on the case. During the time, the Chief Justice was Earl Warren. The Associate Justices were Hugo Black, William O. Douglas, Tom C. Clark, John M. Harlan II, William J. Brennan Jr., Potter Stewart, Byron White, and Abe Fortas. Now, as said, everyone voted the majority, including Warren, and concurrent, and then only one associate justice voted concurrent, which was Justice Potter Stewart, which is a great name, by the way, Potter Stewart.
Mildred and Richard Loving had 3 children, Donald, Peggy, and Sidney.
So here are the basic criminal proceedings. At the age of 18, Mildred became pregnant, and in June 1958, the couple traveled to Washington, D.C. to marry, thereby evading Virginia's Racial Integrity Act of 1924, which, as we said before, made interracial marriage a crime. Then they returned back home to Virginia, which they knew was illegal. That's what separates this case from most. That they knew what they were doing was illegal, but they still, through the power of love, decided to go through it anyway. So in Virginia, when they moved back, they stayed in the basement of their parents' house, and they got by this for a month. But based on an anonymous tip, the local police actually did find them, and in the middle of the night, they barged in to the pair sleeping, cuddling probably, 'cause they're in love, and the cops asked, "Who are you guys?" And they responded, "Richard and Mildred Loving." And they asked Mildred, "Is this your husband?" And she said yes, to which the cop responded, "Not in this state, you aren't."
The Lovings were charged under Section 2058 of the Virginia Code, which prohibited interracial couples from being married out of state and then returning to Virginia, and Section 2059, which classified miscegenation as a felony, punishable by a prison sentence of between 1 and 5 years.
On January 6, 1959, the Lovings pled guilty to their crime and were sentenced to 1 year in prison, but the judge agreed to delay the crime 25 years if the Lovings agreed to immediately move out of the state of Virginia, which they did and ended up moving to the District of Columbia.
In 1964, frustrated by their inability to travel together to visit their families in Virginia and social isolation and financial difficulties in Washington, Mildred Loving wrote in protest to Attorney General Robert F. Kennedy. Kennedy referred her to the American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU.
The ACLU filed a motion on behalf of the Lovings in the state trial court to vacate the judgment and set aside the sentence on the grounds that the violated statutes ran counter to the 14th Amendment. This set in motion a series of lawsuits which ultimately reached the Supreme Court.
The Lovings did not attend the oral arguments in Washington, but their lawyer, Bernard S. Cohen, conveyed the message he had been given by Richard Loving on the court. Mr. Cohen, tell the court I love my wife, and it's just unfair that I can't live with her in Virginia.
In our opinion, the U.S. Supreme Court did make the correct decision. It's very obvious to us. No one should be denied right to marry based on the color of her skin or any reason thereafter. If they love each other, go for it. And the U.S. Supreme Court seems to agree with us.
And I completely agree with Ethan. The fact that the law wasn't overturned until 1967, I think is just ridiculous. Any two separate races, they should definitely be allowed to marry each other.
I would like to point out something interesting. Pace versus Alabama in 1883 was the same case, but it was denied. And then over 100 years, less than 100 years later, it was approved. And I would like to note why. There's two key differences in the trials. One is location, and the other is time. Now, time, it was 1883. This is 18 years after the end of the Civil War, so the South was still pretty bitter about their loss and very, very, very racist. And then the next is location. Alabama. That's deep South. That is very deep South. And when you combine those two factors, they never stood a chance. Now, fast forward 1967, same case, however, different time, where civil rights movement was very, very active and it was gaining national support. And location, Washington D.C. I'm sorry, and that is predominantly northern and very pro civil liberties.
And the case of Loving versus Virginia. There is zero chance that case is ever overturned.
No, we feel that will just as a basic human right, which will never ever be overturned. It's set precedent and will never change. Now, last thing, we just want to reassure you that John did do work, and just because he's not in our video, doesn't mean he didn't apply any effort. He definitely made an effort. He did the research. Unfortunately, I will read to you the text message he sent me 30 minutes ago on why he is not available today. Guys, I hate to say this, but I am really sick. I got home an hour ago and have thrown up twice. Really sorry. Is there anything at all I can do here? Now that just shows his heart and how much he really wanted to be a part of this. So, Mr. Danson, please know that John did put forth an effort. Thanks.
It's always better when we're together. It's always better when we're together.